Do you ever find yourself hitting friends with stinging plants, eating ashes, and staring at useless flowers? Perhaps not, but to each their own. Last month, 3 years since filming, I released my last video from Papua New Guinea, but there were still a number of really interesting plants that never made it into one of those videos for one reason or another, so I thought I would make one last video with the last few nuggets of botanical gold. So, first we have... this one. Salat, as it's called. If you look closely, you can see that this is very much not a plant you would swaddle a baby with. This is a nettle, and like many other nettles, it has these tiny little needle-like irritant injecting hairs all over it, and a brush with one of these would rank pretty low on the tier list of gentle caresses. And that is part of why they're popular in New Guinea. Instead of simply not touching it, it is cultivated precisely so that people can touch it. And of course, this isn't just a recreational thing. Most of the reports I read of this described people rubbing it on themselves to help with aches and pains and various ailments like that. So more of a medicinal thing. In the area I was, though, it reportedly wasn't just rubbed on, it was often smacked on. And that was the gesture it was demonstrated to me with. It was described as being like putting heat on a wound. It hurts in the moment, but after used correctly, it's supposed to help. Some amount of numbing the pain, desensitizing the area. And in a similar vein, actually, apparently it was also traditionally used to psych people up. People who were going into, say, battles or competitions or things like that, they would get beat all over it with it. That was the gesture that was used. I guess getting them stimulated, braced, and again, potentially some numbing from pain going on there. So very interesting use. I kind of regret not touching this to be able to compare it with stinging nettle. Maybe it could have helped with the many bee stings I got while I was there. I don't know if they use it for that specifically, but anyway. Okay, I had originally planned when I was in Papua New Guinea to make a video on plants used for various survival skills, and this was an interesting one. This was Lepa. It's, I wasn't certain on the species ID. I think it was Furcraea selloa, which isn't native to the area, though is naturalized in some of the surrounding areas, so it could have been that. But this guy was a fibrous fellow if ever I met one. If you cut open those big thick leaves there, you can get a whole bunch of these really tough fibers out of it that were used to make string. And then from there to make these bilum bags, they're called. There's these kind of a mesh bag that almost everyone around there uses. Really light, but really strong and durable as well. And often dyed a lot of different bright colors. Worth noting that this is a plant one would not enjoy sitting on very often. It's got these long, sharp rows of hooks along the edges, which it turns out puncture skin pretty easily. I found that out firsthand. But anyway, on to the next one. Bananas. I don't have a lot to say here, but New Guinea probably isn't the first place most people think of when they think of bananas, but it's actually thought to be where bananas were first domesticated. Not a widely known fact, but New Guinea was actually one of the hotspots of ancient agriculture, and a fair number of plant crops were first domesticated there. Correspondingly, they do have quite a few different types of bananas in Papua New Guinea, but I didn't end up exploring that much further. I was too busy eating Goroka and stepping on bees. And Taro is another such plant that comes from there, or certain types of taro anyway. That one seems to have been domesticated in a few places independently. Fun legume here. I couldn't ID this one for sure. My best guess is it's some type of Mimosa, same genus as sensitive plants, and would also be invasive in that case. But they called it a 6 o'clock plant, and they gave it that name because around 6 in the evening, the leaves would kind of curl up for the night, and then 6 in the morning, they would open back up again. Plants do this, nyctinasty is the scientific word. There seem to be a few benefits behind it, but the main idea is that it protects the plant from late night munchers. Obviously, the plant's not going to be photosynthesizing at night, so if the leaves can just fold up, well, one, they look less enticing, and two, even if something does start munching on them, that herbivore is going to have a lot harder time hiding from predators around. So it's kind of a double protection for the plant. Oh, okay. Nuts and nut-like fruits make up a pretty large part of the average New Guinean person's diet, at least traditionally. And man, these ones here, Galip Nuts. I never saw the trees. They're more of a lowland plant, and I was up in the highlands, but I saw some at the airport here and bought them. And boy, I have eaten a lot of nuts in my day, and those were definitely amongst the most spectacular I have ever ingested. Like, even now, when the specifics of the flavor have faded from memory, I wonder if I've idealized them a bit in my mind over time. Like, were they actually as good as I remember? Or probably, yeah. I don't know. But anyway, if you ever get the chance to try them, highly recommended. And orchids. Okay, there were dump loads of orchids there. And some of them apparently had practical uses. These ones here traditionally use those little, they're called pseudobulbs at the base of the plant. They use those to make beads, more for special occasion dressing up than just everyday wear, like maybe for a sing-sing or something like that, at least if I remember correctly. Actually, if you want to know about the biological function of those little pseudobulbs, in my upcoming Costa Rica videos, I'll have a segment on that. But there were also, some orchids that grew more like this with, I believe those are aerial roots there. And apparently they're pretty full of tough fibers, which, like the Lepa, can be used to make string. Papa James showed me an arrow/spear he had that had some of this pretty intricate string work on the tip. Apparently that is a traditional art that's unfortunately being lost. His father had made that arrow, and Papa James himself had never learned just how that was done. I don't know if there was a practical purpose to that string there or if it was purely aesthetic, but some beautiful work in any case. Who doesn't like a good ash now and again? This comes as a surprise to many people, but there are actually many places around the world today, and many more places historically, where people regularly eat ash. Yes, ash, like as in burnt stuff, largely plant matter. Now, this is done a few different ways, and different plants' ashes will be used differently. Some cases they'll take ashes and process them to extract salt from them. Sometimes plant ash will just be sprinkled onto food straight as a seasoning. In this case here, the ashes of, I think it was coconut husk and ibeca, were added to the base of like a curry might not be, I don't know if curry is quite the right word, but a coconut broth that was used to cook vegetables and crocodile meat. It gave sort of a subtle, salty, smoky, savory undertone, slightly bitter, but in a way that worked remarkably well with the dish. So thank you to Molly for demonstrating that to me. That was quite good. Okay, this one is actually from Southeast Asia, not PNG, but boy howdy is it a weird looking flower, the bat flower. For a while, scientists thought maybe it was just pulling these aesthetic shenanigans for pollination reasons, to attract flies and other things that like the look of dead stuff. But to make this one a bit of a weird case, on further research, it turns out it doesn't really get pollinated much at all. It just mostly self-pollinates, actually. And yet it has this bizarrely complex flowering structure that just seems to kind of show off, and that's about it. Maybe further research will reveal more, like maybe at one point it had pollinators, but now they're rare or extinct. But for now, it's a bit of a puzzle, that one. Fascinating things, though. And the dance mantis. Okay, if you made it to the credits in any of my other PNG videos, you might have seen this, but this video isn't actually edited at all here. It has a definite shuck and shuffle in its walk. But what it's doing there, it's less about moving and grooving and having a good time and more about dancing with the shadows so as to not die. You see this behavior in stick insects and sometimes others as well. And it's actually a camouflaging behavior, which is not working too well right here. It's a little counterintuitive that sometimes moving more will actually make it less visible, but well, you can see it already has a bit of a bark-like coloring on it. So if you take this thing off of a flat table and put it up amongst branches and leaves that are constantly fluttering and swaying, suddenly it starts to make a lot more sense why it might also be swaying. And as funny as it looks here, to the eye of a predator or a prey, living in an environment where many things are constantly shifting, this guy might actually stand out a lot more if he's moving steadily in one direction instead of, as he's doing, just wobbling through the greenery. Oh, and last but not least, if you saw my winged bean video where I accidentally filmed the entire video in front of the wrong plant, well, I finally have the right plant to show here. I am growing one myself, hoping I can at least get a leaf crop out of this one. Maybe some beans too, we'll see. Can check on my Instagram, I'll update if I get more. But anyway, it was a bit of a different format this time from my usual videos, so let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Might possibly do one of these from my time in the Cook Islands before this. If there's interest, we'll see. But Papua New Guinea, one of the most biodiverse places on the planet, so I obviously just barely scratched the surface with all the plant videos I did there. So if you know of any other good plants, I'd be glad to hear about them in the comments there. So thank you for liking and subscribing though, and I will see you next time on Ambling with Sam.